Hello students, this is Amardeep Singh, your computer teacher, and today we are going to continue with the same chapter, looping in Python. And in this session we'll discuss about some lab activities related to nested loops. So in this lecture we'll work with some series, numbered series, to understand the logic of nested loops. So first we'll discuss about this series. First we'll discuss about the logic of this series. In here we are having, first time we are having a value that we want to print, that is 1, and next time we will print 1 and 2, and then next time we will print 1, 2 and 3, then 1, 2, 3 and 4, the next 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So that means we have to define a loop that will always start from 1, and the end of that loop is changing again and again. So that means the first time that loop will end at 1, start from 1, and last value it will generate, that is 1. Then next time the same loop will start from 1 and end at 2. Then next time it will again start from 1 and the last value it will generate is 3. Next initial value is 1, then end value is 4, initial value is 1 and end value is 5. And the next we will discuss how we can create, how we can define a loop with one fixed value and a variable endpoint. So here we are having a loop for j in range 1 comma I. That means if you want to define a loop with variable endpoint, that means you have to define, you have to pass second variable, second parameter as a variable. So if we will run this loop, then if you want to generate this value 1 first time, that means we have to run this loop starting from 1 to 2, because the endpoint, the loop always execute one less than the specified endpoint. So that means I have to generate a value for this I, the first value of I, that will be 2. Then next time I have to run the same loop starting from 1 to 3 if you want to generate 1 and 2. So that means the next value of I must be 3. Then next time same, if you want to run a loop starting from 1 to 3, then the end value must be 4. If you want to run a loop starting from 1 to 4, then the last value must be 5. And in the same way, if you want to generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the end value, if you want to generate 5, then the end of that loop must be 6. So if you want to define a loop with variable end or a start point, then that loop must be a nested loop inside another loop. So that means if you want to generate these values, if you want to create or define a loop with variable endpoint, then you must define this loop as a nested loop, and the values of I will be generated by a parent loop. So here we are having a parent loop for I in range 1 to 6. That means this loop will generate value starting from 1 to 5, less than 1 less than the 6. That means it will generate value starting from 1 to 5. If you will pass this I here as a second parameter inside range function in this nested loop, then the first value the parent loop will pass to the nested loop range function, that will be 1. But we need here 2, because we need 2. If you want to generate value starting from 1 to 1, then you have to pass this as a second parameter, I as a second parameter, and the value of I must be 2. So we are having two solutions. One, we can define here in the parent loop, we have defined the starting value 2 and the end value 7. If you want to generate these values starting from 2 to 6, you can also pass 2 and 7, but I'll define 1 to 6 and we can use I plus 1. So that means if you want to define generate those values, I have passed here I plus 1 to generate these values. So when this the nested loop will execute, the first value it will receive from the parent loop, the value of I will be 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 means 2. That means this loop will execute and generate a value 1. Then after that the condition will be false because the range end of the range is 2, and the next control move back to the parent loop and the increment will be there in the value of I. Then now presently the value of I will be 2. So when the nested loop j in range I, then the nested loop will receive a value of I from parent loop that will be 2. Then we have used I plus 1, that means 3. It will generate value starting from 1 to 3, that means 1 and 2. Then next, in the same way, it will always generate receive a value from the parent loop and add 1 in that value and generate value starting from 1 to that specified value. So let's define the code to generate the same series. I have defined a loop, parent loop starting from 1 to 6 and a nested loop starting from 1 to I plus 1. Inside this for loop, inside the nested loop, you have to print value of j. Then save the code, press F5. Now you can see the values has been generated in correct order. I 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So in this way, that means we have generated the values by defining that logic inside the nested loop. But the output is not in correct format, in correct order that you want to print. You want to print that in a 1 in one line, then 1, 2 in next line, 1, 2, 3 in next line. As we know that the print function always create a new line after printing its result. So if you don't want to don't want the print function to create a new line, then you have to make some changes in the code also. So I'll use print then value of j. Then as we discussed in earlier sessions, that we are having an end parameter. End parameter is used to decide what print function will do at after printing its result. So uh, we don't want to change the line, so that means inside end function by default end function will do slash n. Slash n means a new line will be generated. So if you don't want to print to generate a new line, then you can write inside double quotes any single character, or even you can place a blank space also. I'll use a blank space. So now after printing the value of j, the print function will not generate a new line. It will just leave a space and generate and print next value. So now you can see, if you will save and print, now the values has been generated again in correct order, but not in correct format that we want. So here we are having the output in a single row. First the output was in a single column, and here the output is in a single row. Now if you want, what you all have to do, I want that after the completion of nested loop, the system must change the line. The print function or any technique that you can use to change the line after exiting from the nested loop. So after exiting from the nested loop, I'll define a print function to change the line. I'll use print. Inside the print function, I'll use escape character, that is slash n, and save it. And now this line will execute. This particular line will execute when the control will exit from the nested loop. So it will change the line after exiting from the nested loop. So now here we are having the output. So nested loop execute once, then control will exit from that loop and the line will be changed. And the next time the nested loop execute two times, 1 and 2, and after the exiting from the nested loop, the line has been changed, and in the same way. So that is the logic how we can generate a series in this order. So that was the complete logic to generate this series. So again, if you want to discuss, then inside this was the first value was generated by the first iteration of nested loop. Then next two values will be generated by the second iteration of nested loop. Nested loop will execute two times and it will generate 1 and 2. And in third iteration, the nested loop will execute three times one and it will generate 1, 2 and 3. And in fourth iteration, the nested loop will execute starting from 1, 2, 3 and 4. And in the last iteration, fifth iteration, the nested loop will generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. So that is all about how we can generate this series. So here we are having next series that we will discuss, and presently we are having a nested loop that will start from 1 and the end value generated by that nested loop will be 5, and the next initial value is 1 and the last printed value will be 4. Initial value is 1 and the last printed value will be 3, and initial value is 1 and last value will be 2 and 1 to 1. And now you can see that with the initial value, the starting value of nested loop will be 1, that is a fixed value, and but the last value is a variable. That means the first value, last value will be 5. Then next time the last value generated will be 4, then 3, then 2, and 1. So again, we have to define a logic for nested loop first and parent loop after that. So inside that nested loop, we have to define the start value 1 as a fixed value and the end value will be a variable. And next we have to decide the first value of I that the nested loop will receive from the parent loop. The first value we need here is 6. If you want to generate value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then the first value will be 1 and last value will be 6, and the loop will execute one less than that endpoint. So that will be 5. And again next time the initial value will be 1 and the end value will be 5. So it will generate 1, 2, 3, 4. And next time the initial value will be 1 and end value will be 4. So that means it will generate 1, 2, 3. And next time 3 to generate 1 and 2. Next time 2 to generate value 1 and 1 only. So we have to define this loop. So we have to generate the value starting from 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. You can also specify here 6 and end at 1 with the decrement of that is the updation amount with -1 decrement. So that is the step statement inside the parent loop. So presently in this loop, you can define a parent loop in two ways, starting from 5 to 0 or 6 to 1 also, with a 1 decrement of 1 value, that is -1. So if you want, if you will write 6 here and 1 here, then you can use the nested loop as it is. But if you will define 5 here, if you will write 5 to 0, then you have to increase the value of this variable with 1 always. You have to add 1 to this variable always. So in here we are using 5 as a parent loop variable. Then that means we have to add +1. So when this loop will execute first time, it will execute 5 times starting from 1 to 6. That means it will generate values 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Then after exiting from this loop, the control will again move to the parent loop, and the value of this variable will be decrement by 1, and the value of I will be 4. Then again nested loop will receive the control, the value of I will be 4 here, and plus 1 means it will generate value starting from 1 to 4 and so on. So here we have written the same code, and the value of parent loop variable, the starting value will be 5 and the end value will be 0. That means this loop will execute starting from 5 to 1. Then inside the nested loop we have started the value of nested loop variable from 1, and the end value is the value of I plus 1 that we have received from that we will receive from the parent loop. So again we have to print value of j, comma, the same logic that we have already discussed in previous example, and after exiting from the nested loop we have to change the line. So we have to define print slash n. You can also write print statement without any parameter, just leave the double quotes blank, but I will use slash n. So now you can see the same series has been generated. If you want to give some space in between these characters, then you can also increase this space. Now I have specified two spaces, then when you will run this code, then the space gap between those characters will be increased. Then next we will discuss this series, and in this series the first value generated by nested loop is 1. Then next time nested loop will generate values starting from 2 to 1, 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1. So that means presently the end of the nested loop is a fixed value and the starting of the nested loop is a variable. So that means you have to define a nested loop first. Now you can see that the value of we have defined for j in range I to 0. So if you want to generate last value 1, then you have to specify end is to 0. Then now you can see the value is decrementing every time. That means 2 1 3 2 1 4 3 2 1. These values will be generated by the nested loop. So that means you have to decrease the value of nested loop variable. So the first value, according to this logic, the first value of I that we have to generate will be, first time it will be 1. So that means the nested loop will start from 1 to 0. That means it will generate 1. The next value, the I will be of I will be 2. So that means the loop will start from 2 to 0. That means it will generate value 2 and 1. The next time the value of y will be 3, 3 to 0. That means 3 to 1. 4 to 0 means 4 to 1. 5 to 0 means 5 to 5 4 3 to 1. So that means these are the values of I variable, and the variable I value of I variable will be received from the parent loop. So that means we have to define a parent loop to generate these values 1 2 3 4 5, and this one so easy. I think to generate it is too easy to generate these values starting from 1 to 5. So only we have to define a loop that will generate these values as a parent loop. So presently we are having a parent loop. The starting value of parent loop is 1 and the end value is 6. That means it will generate value starting from 1 to 5, and every time this loop will execute, it will send a value to the nested loop. and the nested loop will receive the value of I and generate the same series. So here we are having the same code. So all we have to do is that we have to print the value of j with same logic and equal to, you can leave spaces in between that, one or two, any number of spaces, and after exiting from the nested loop we have to print, or we have to change the line with the help of /n, then save it and run the code. Now you can see that the same series has been generated. So that's all about how we can generate all of the series. Again, I want to revise that always we have to understand the logic of, we have to plan the logic of a nested loop first, and we have to decide the values that parent loop have to generate. So that means always we have to start with the nested loop, logic of the nested loop, and after that we have to decide what the values a nested loop will be received from the parent loop. So, and after that you have to define a parent loop for generating all these values. So that is all about the present session. If you people are having any kind of doubt related to nested loop, the